All right, just a brief lecture today. You should have turned in your camera tracking one. This week we're working on finishing up the UI interface stuff. And then as you're finishing that up, you can start working on the artwork and planning for this one. We have this week, one day next week, and then 2 more weeks left of class. One of those days will be our final. So you'll come in, I'll give you something to do, and then you'll build a piece during class. We'll also have a demo reel that we do. That's usually a quick one, basically just putting all the pieces together with transitions between them. And then obviously this one. So the next step in doing this one is to go through your stuff. A couple people didn't send me their stuff. Of the ones that I saw were really good, very thorough, good points. So that next step is to go through and start condensing it into concise facts that you could start putting into your stuff. So what I'm going to do is I have my 5 facts here. And let me get rid of my bullets. There we go. So I'm going to do look at each one of these, and I'm going to see, number 1, can I shorten it? Fatal motorcyclist 25% had BAC at 0.08% or greater. So that one is already shortened. This one, drugs other than alcohol, legal and illegal, are involved in about 16% of motor vehicle crashes in 2016. More than 1 million drivers, I think this is like the same fact that I grabbed, I'm just going to separate it. In 2016, more than 1 million drivers were arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol or narcotics. That's 1% of 111 million self-reported episodes, blah, 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 blah. All right, so a lot of stuff happening inside of this specific one. You want to condense it, right, into something concise, especially if you decide if you're going to do a voiceover. Like I said, you can typically have a little bit more information than if you just have text on the screen. Most people don't have a voiceover. Most people will just have the text. So for this one, I'm going to imagine I'm just doing the graphics. So I'm going to say 2016, and then I'll just put 1 million drivers arrested for driving under the influence. Now, someone watching this video will assume drunk driving, they're under the influence, boom, they'll connect the dots. We don't need to have of alcohol or narcotics inside there. And then we also don't need this, which is just kind of reiterating that same exact fact about this first statistic, okay? So that here is just a brief synopsis of what that fact was all about. In 2016, 10,497 people died in alcohol-impaired driving crashes, accounting for all 28% of related deaths in the United States. Again, we have 2 facts bunched into the same line. We don't need both of those. It also kind of, when you get into this in 2016, in 2014, in 2012, it's kind of redundant. You kind of like repeat yourself, and it gets kind of old. So I'll still leave it there for now, but I may reduce it or get rid of it. So I may say 2016. %28 of all there you go. Driving under the influence accounted for 28% of all traffic-related deaths in the United States. Okay. So this line right here, this is, if I was just doing graphics, that would be perfect. If I was actually stating it, this line here is probably long enough where that would be an appropriate amount of time for one line to be, okay? So once I've gone through and I've figured out how I'm doing this, I figured out these concise statements that I'm going to be using, my next step is to go through and try to figure out the best way to get from fact to fact to fact. In some cases, it would make sense to have them a certain way, like up here where it says alcohol caused. I already have that one. Yeah, there's my other conciser statement, that one there. There we go. So fatal motorcyclists where 25% had BAC of 0.08 or greater. Here's 2016, we're talking about traffic-related deaths, so maybe that would make sense to talk about this here and then talk about the motorcyclist having 25% having a blood alcohol level of that. And then also maybe putting, I guess that one's already in the right order. Okay, now let's do that, that's better. And then this one, of the 1,233 traffic deaths among children aged 0 to 14 years in 2016, that's way too long. This traffic deaths has nothing to do with drunk driving, right? They're only basically saying 17% are involved in alcohol impair related there. So I can shorten this statement to 214 as of children 0 to 14 years old. Now, if all of these seem like they're all from 2016, this one was 2016, these two are also 2016. So I could have just, based on information on 2016 as one blanket statement and then have all of this other information start to come out. Okay. Fatal motorcyclist. I think this is probably a more impactful statement here. So I'll put that there. Okay, maybe this one isn't so much, like 1 million people arrested for it. Like maybe that's not, I mean, that's a nice fact, I guess, but it's not really like anything I need to worry about. I think I like this fact here. This is impactful. We're only using 3 of these. So I want to find the 3 that maybe have the most impact and the most fluidity to what I'm trying to tell. So I'm going to pick drugs other than alcohol. Legal and illegal are involved in about 16% of that. Yeah, this one doesn't make sense either, but so I'm not going to use that one. I will use this one. There we go. Because this one is talking about drugs and other than alcohol are involved about 16%. So that's not even talking about mine. So I'll get rid of that one. All right, so I have this fact, then that fact, and then I would have, the 2 more if I have time. We're not going to have time though. Okay, we have 30 seconds. It's a lot to fit in 30 seconds. Typically, if you figure one line of this is about every 8 seconds, and that leaves us a little bit of time at the beginning, a little bit of time at the end to tell people what it is we're talking about and tell people what we want them to do after the fact. And then my call to action here would be don't drink or drive, or call an Uber next time you go to the bar, right, or something. Something along those lines. I could also put a website, visit this for more information. All right, so I have my facts. I have them in some sort of order. I have my call to action. I have my title here. Now I need to lay out graphic-wise, kind of think about how I would get from one to the other. So I already mentioned that 2016 is a relevant fact for all 3 of these things. So I'm just going to have 2016 at some point in there. And then where it says 1 million drivers arrested for driving under the influence, how do I want to show that off? How do I want to show 1 million drivers were arrested for driving under the influence? Sir?
One of the things I did on a stat-based fact is that I basically drew it said this fact in question basically said something about 6.7% of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just basically rounded up and used mostly, I used 10 faces, but only 6 were affected.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it too.
Or really a 6.7 as, and maybe like most of the face is affected, but then there's like part that isn't or something. I don't.
Yeah, no, you're on the right track there. So that's a good way to show it, right? So if we're doing something like like this, driving under the influence accounted for 28% of all traffic-related deaths in the U.S., perfect. If I had a chart or a picture of, let's say 10 cars in Matt's case, I could shade in almost 3 of them and say, almost 30% of all traffic-related deaths in the U.S. Are part of that. Now think about the visual, think about how we communicate that is very important. So for something where I put 1 million drivers arrested for driving under the influence, let's say I did a chart of every person in America where there's billions of people, and then I said 1 million drivers are arrested for driving under the influence, it's basically going to show a very small percentage, and that isn't going to be very impactful, right? But if I show, if I find out how many people are actually arrested for driving, or arrested for, how many people are drivers, I guess, that still wouldn't be very good.
You could do basically like the percentage of the city and be like, that's like half of this city.
Right. You could do something like that too, exactly. If I'm doing this one, 28%, it's probably more impactful to say 1 in every 3 people, right? Almost nearly 1 in every 3 people will be arrested or accounting for all the traffic-related deaths. So think of how graphically you're creating these things so that you would have something that is more impactful, that doesn't diminish the seriousness of what you're trying to show off. So find a city that has 1 million drivers arrested for driving under influence. That's like, I don't know what city has 1 million people in it, but find one. And then I'm going to start to create the graphics. We've been through all the stuff inside of Illustrator of how to create graphics. We've been through how to bring those things into After Effects. If you wanted to do a voiceover, you'd want to create an actual script of lines. Like this is the exact line that I want to have read inside there. Obviously, if we're doing this text-wise, when we get into After Effects, we can kind of tweak it and modify it and maybe just hit the bullet points. Maybe just put 1 million drivers and then DUI, right? Arrested for DUI or something like that. For driving under the influence, we can put 28% of all traffic-related deaths, right? That could be just enough there that we would have that in one spot and something else in another spot, right? So start to think about each one of those lines and how you would create a graphic for them that would visually represent in an impactful way what you're trying to show off. And then how you would get from one to the other, okay? So we're doing 3 of these facts with the call to action. So basically you're going to have, this is my subject, go into the first point, go into the second point, go into the third point, go into the call to action, and then that's it. And you have 30 seconds to do that. So you have to be very clever about how you're setting those things up. Questions on it?
So we can just pick whichever one. We're not like getting their approval anymore on it.
Correct. All of them that I looked at, everyone had a good amount. Yeah, so the ones that people turned in, they were good, they worked. So any one that you are most passionate about, also consider something that people haven't done. If you find something out of the box, it's a little bit more stand-outy if you have something like that. If I do one on drunk driving and 10 other people do one on drunk driving, every semester people do them on drunk driving, then I go to YouTube and I look for drunk driving social awareness, I'm going to pull up 1,000 videos at least. Where if I choose something very specific, which there were a few of them in here, it's going to be a lot more relevant to obviously you and a lot more specific when you go and search those things if people do search them. Cool. Any other questions? Sir?
Did you say that you were going to help us figure out which one we should do, or are we just going to do that?
I can help you, but if you, like any of yours were fine. So if you have more of a passion for one or the other, then I would choose that one. Because obviously you're going to have more of a connection to it. I had someone whose mother had breast cancer, and then he really wanted to do that specific one. Any one of his would work. So he had more passion for doing that, so he did that one. Cool. Any other questions? No? This is the last lecture on this one. Once you get the artwork, once you get your stuff, you just go. At this point, you've gone through all the stuff. You've gone through how to create the artwork, how to bring in After Effects, how to animate it, how to create these transitions. You know expressions a bit, you know rigging a bit if you need to use that. Think about motion in each one of your pieces. Nothing should be just like PowerPoint. It should flow, it should have some sort of movement to each one of your pieces, even if it's subtle. Cool?